Hi, it's me, Olivia. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe to my channel for interesting stories and visit my Patreon page for early access, link in the description. Thanks. When I was 11 years old, I was friends with a little girl named Lisa who lived across the street. We were about the same age and in general, like the same things. In fact, she was a tomboy who dressed pretty much like the other boys in our neighborhood. But every once in a while her mother, who looked like Jill Taylor from the show, Tool Time, would make her wear a dress. I used to admire Lisa clothes and wish I could try them on. There was a red dress in particular that caught my eye. I would spend hours dreaming of playing dress up with Lisa and trying on her clothes. But Lisa was more into doing boy things than playing dress up or house, so I knew my dream would never happen. Or would it? One day I learned that Lisa and her parents were leaving for an overnight trip to visit her grandparents. Her father was looking for a new job in another city so they could be closer to them. This meant the house would be empty for an entire day. All I had to do was find a way in. I decided then and there that I was going to enter their house while they were gone and try on some of Lisa's clothes. A plan formed in my mind and I put it into action. The night before they left, I went over to play with Lisa and made sure one of the basement windows was unlocked. The next morning, I woke up in time to see Lisa getting into the car and watching it drive away. As soon as the car turned the corner, the excitement inside me started to build. Today was the day I would get the chance to try on some girls' clothes. Oh, I had worn some of my mother's stuff before, but everything was always too big. Now I was going to wear something in MY size. I wanted to leave right then, but two fears held me up. First, I was afraid if I left too early my mom would get suspicious and watch to see where I was going. Second, I was concerned that Lisa's family may come right back. Despite my enthusiasm, I somehow waited until 9 a.m. before making my move. After telling my mother I was going out to play, I calmly trotted over to Lisa's backyard. Making sure no one was looking, I slid behind a bush that hid the unlocked window. I sat there for a moment, wondering if anyone had noticed the window was unlocked and had relocked it. But when I pushed on the window, it opened right up. I slid myself into the basement and locked the window behind me. The house was quiet and spooky, and for the first time I felt guilty about what I was doing. True, I wasn't planning to steal or damage anything. Still, I knew what I was doing was wrong. Despite my guilt, the excitement of trying on some of Lisa's clothes overcame what I was feeling. Cautiously, I walked upstairs while carefully checking to make sure no one else was home. Convinced I was alone, I walked into Lisa's room. It was your typical girl's room, except there were more boys' toys lying about than girls' toys. I stood in front of the closet for 30 full seconds just thinking, this had been so easy. I couldn't believe that something so forbidding and beyond my wildest dreams was about to come true. I grabbed the knob and slowly opened up the closet door in anticipation. There hanging in front of me were a number of pretty dresses, some that I had never seen Lisa wear before. I was like a kid in a candy store. I didn't know which one to try on first. Then I spotted the red dress I liked so much. It was a simple dress with white bows on the sleeves and just long enough to cover my thighs. I reached out and grabbed it off the hanger. Holding it up in front of me, I stood in front of the mirror trying to see how it would look. I hadn't even tried anything on, and yet I couldn't remember a happier day in my life. I felt so soft and feminine in my hands, and I had to try it on. But just as I was getting ready to take off my shirt, I heard someone ask, "So Jeff, did you find anything in your size?" I turned to see Mrs. Smith standing in the doorway with an amused look on her face. No doubt she had seen the whole thing. However, I quickly put the dress behind my back in a poor attempt to hide it. "Mrs. Smith," I shouted out, "what are you doing here?" Without changing her expression, she replied, "I decided to stay home and get caught up on my needlework." Lisa decided that she would rather visit her grandparents while her father looked for a job than stay here with me. Now, the $10,000 question is, what are you doing here, young man? I didn't know what to say. Even though I had been caught red-handed, I wasn't about to admit the real reason for being there. I did some quick thinking and blurted out, "I couldn't find my baseball this morning and thought maybe I had left it over here last night." I see." She smiled even more. "And what's that behind your back?" "Nothing," I answered nervously. I clutched the dress tighter, hoping this would cause it to disappear. She walked over to where I was standing and bent down. "Looks like something to me." Come on now, Jeff, let go of it. Let me see what it is. She pulled the dress out of my hands that were behind my back and held it up in front of me. This doesn't look like a baseball to me, she said with a big grin. What were you planning to do with Lisa's dress? Well, you see, I stuttered, trying to think up a good story. I knocked it off the hanger by accident and it fell to the floor. So I picked it up and was checking to make sure it wasn't dirty before I put it back. It might have been a good story if I had been able to tell it convincingly. Unfortunately, Mrs. Smith saw right through it. I see, she replied, getting down on her knees and holding the dress upright to me. Nope, it looks clean to me. I like this dress. Lisa looks real cute in it. You know, I hadn't realized it before, but you and Lisa are about the same size. I bet you could wear this dress if you wanted to. The words made me freeze. Had I really heard her right? Was she implying it was all right with her if I tried it on? Or was she waiting to see how I would reply before yelling at me for breaking into her house? I stood there not know what to say. Mrs. Smith had always been a nice lady to me, but then I had never been in trouble with her before. Sensing my fear, Mrs. Smith smiled softly and in a low voice said, "Don't worry, Jeff. I'm not going to tell anyone what happened. I know you're a nice kid." She paused for a moment to stare at me, then she spoke the words I had dreamed of hearing. "And if you want, I could dress you up as my little girl." A cold chill of excitement ran down my spine. Had I really heard her right? Was she being sincere, or was this a trap? Still afraid to show my true feelings, I played her last comment off as a joke. Giving her a weak smile, I replied, "Well, I guess that would depend on what you made me wear." "What do you mean?" she asked mischievously. "You heard the saying, your mother dresses you funny." I responded, trying to sound humorous while hiding my excitement. She smiled sweetly and said, "Why, I would dress you in the most beautiful dress, with ribbons and bows, and frilly panties, lace anklets, and black patent leather shoes. Wouldn't you look just adorable? You'd be the ultimate in femininity, for a little girl, I mean." My mind went numb. I wanted to scream out, "Yes, yes, I'll do it," but was afraid of what she would do if I sounded too eager. After all, my parents could never accept my desire to dress up. With years of living in fear under my belt, it was hard to believe someone was willing to let me live out my dream and not judge me for it. I tried to find the words but couldn't. Finally, she spoke. "There are a few rules we need to get worked out. First, we can't tell anyone about what we do today. It'll be our little secret. Second, you'll spend the day here until it's time to go home for supper. I'll call your mom to let her know where you are so she won't worry. Third, your name will be, let's see, how about Susanna Marie Smith? I've always wanted another little girl so I could give her that name. You, on the other hand, will refer to me as Mommy. Finally, you will have to act like a good little girl. That means listening and doing what I tell you to do even if you don't want to. Are we clear on these rules?" I nodded out a yes and tried to appear more relaxed. I didn't realize it, but the last rule would come back to haunt me later. "Now, would you like to see the outfit I have in mind?" she asked pleasantly. I nodded silently and for the first time began to wonder what I had gotten myself into. She smiled, got up off her knees, and took my hand. "Okay, come with me, dear." I was beginning to believe that Mrs. Smith was looking forward to this just as much as I was. She led me down the hallway into a spare bedroom. "I got this outfit so Lisa could compete in the Little Misses contest at the local fair next month. But being such a tomboy, I had to fight with her just to try it on. It was too girlish, as she called it, to wear for any period of time outside the contest. What do you think?" Mrs. Smith pulled from the closet one of the prettiest dresses I had ever seen. It was light pink and made out of a silky material with white lace and bows attached all over it. The dress had a white, lacy collar garnished with small, white bows. The shoulders of the sleeves were widely puffed out but came together midway down the arm and ended at the elbows. On the ends of the sleeves were little white bows and lace. From the collar down to where the skirt began, the dress had a light, flower pattern on it. The skirt of the dress was actually two skirts, the lower being just a plain, pink color made out of the silky material. The top skirt covered the bottom skirt completely and was made out of a semi-transparent, silky pink lace with the same flower design as on the top part of the dress. At the hem of the skirt, small, feminine bows were fixed to it. Around the waist was a wide, white ribbon that was tied into a big bow in the back. "You'll need this to get the skirt to spread out," Mrs. Smith said as she grabbed a lacy petticoat from the closet. "I think the rest of the stuff we can find in Lisa's room. Let's go back there and get you dressed." She pushed the petticoat into my arms and carefully picked up the hanger that held the dress. I followed her back down the hallway into Lisa's room, carrying the pile of silk and lace in my hands that would soon be on my body. My mind was going into overload with happiness and excitement. After hanging the dress on the back of the door, Mrs. Smith opened up a dresser drawer. "Let's see, you'll need underwear," as she threw an unopened package onto the bed. "Would you look at this? It's never been open." Lisa wouldn't even try them on. "Or the socks," as she tossed another unopened package on the bed. Next, she walked over to the closet and pulled out a pair of shiny, black shoes and a robe. She placed the shoes on the bed and handed me the robe. "Here, take off your clothes and put this on." I did as she said, putting the robe on before taking off my pants and underwear. Mrs. Smith picked up the pile of clothes and told me she would be right back. She left the room and a moment later reappeared with a long, blonde wig. "Bet you didn't know your mother was a blonde at one time," she said with a smile. "Okay, I think we're ready to start." As we sat on the bed, she explained what everything was and in what order I needed to put them on. She was very comforting in her words, as if she were deliberately making sure she didn't say anything that might embarrass me. She also had a blissful smile on her face, as if she were enjoying the moment. Once this was done, Mrs. Smith looked at me for a moment and said, "If you need help with something, just let me know. In the meantime, I'm going to call your mom, just to let her know where you are, and get dressed myself. Take all the time you need, honey, all right?" With those parting words, she got up and left, closing the door behind her. I rushed to the door and opened it slightly so I could hear her conversation with my mother. It turned out my mom was going shopping that afternoon and was hoping Mrs. Smith could watch me while she was gone. Talk about good luck. After Mrs. Smith hung up the phone, I closed the door and turned to the job at hand. First, I opened up the package of new underwear that was lying on the bed. They were white and silky with ruffles attached to the outside all around. I carefully stepped into them and pulled them up. A cool wave of excitement ran throughout my body, causing me to shiver slightly. The panties were much silkier than anything I had tried on before. Please subscribe for the next part and visit my Patreon page for early access. Thanks.